I don't think that Donny Vaughan sending off has as big an influence on the game as people are making out in terms of John Small. If he doesn't do it, John Small, I don't think gets red carded. I don't think any referee's given a second yellow for something that's, well, really, I shouldn't have given that first yellow.
No, I don't know. I remember my own reaction in comms the second he thumped him with the shoulder. I immediately said, John Small's in big trouble, he's already on a yellow. That was before Donny Vaughan came careering in.
He gave himself
from
a good minute and a half to, who was the other guy? What happens here? Whew. I got to send them both off.
Yeah.
No, I think he was gone.
If John Small wasn't on a yellow, would he have sent either of them off?
That's a slightly different debate.
I think he has to send Vaughan off, doesn't he?
Does he?
I don't know. I think if John Small hasn't already picked up a yellow card, he gets a yellow and Vaughan gets one as well.
All right.
Now, this is...
It looked like a straight red from where we were.
Oh, it was a straight red.
Yeah.
But the circumstances would have been so
he didn't
different.
elbow him. He raised his
Ah,
arm.
it's a
Clothesline,
forearm
more of a
smash.
clothesline. He got him with the inside of his arm, cracked him around the neck.
Forearm.
Well, that's what it looked like from the stands, you know. I mean, I'm not sure Joe McQuillan's...
Ultimately,
No,
I think-
clearly he shouldn't have done it, but I got to say when he did, I was off my seat going, go on!
And then when the red card, you're like...
Yeah, clearly when he did it, both Aidan O'Shea and Stephen Rochford were not of your opinion.
No,
they were
they
like,
weren't.
oh my Jesus, what has he done?
They're...
I think the referee got both calls spot on. They were both shown the proper colour card
I
for
think
the
so too, yeah.
infractions.
Yeah. Welcome along to the best of Off the Ball this Friday evening. You can text the show on 53106, but don't bother because no one's going to read it. You can email us something at offtheball.com is our email address.
Definitely don't send it to that because nobody ever checks it. Just tweet the show.
We've got David Nathan here, you know, the Mayo and the Dublin commentary duo. Have you guys made, did you make peace with each other this
There was
week?
never any peace
Was there
required to be made.
Well, you're patronising him. Has he patronised you a lot this week?
It hasn't been too bad, but there's been a lot of patronising from just Dublin people.
It is very difficult for Dublin people to open their mouths at all this week without appearing to be or being accused of being patronising.
And you've loved every minute of it.
But what can you say? No matter what you say, you sound like a knob.
Yeah.
I just hope something really dramatic happens in the women's final so that there's something else to talk about next week. If another person asks me, how are you after Sunday?
How are you after Sunday? How are you?
I'm not well.
Are you not?
No.
Are you grand now, though?
Until you start hearing little bits of commentary and start thinking, it's that 90 seconds when Mayo were 2 points in front.
You're in a bid to try and get over what happened on Sunday. You're tweeting photos of freeze frames of that particular moment in the game when Mayo were 2 points
Well, I
up
had
with
to watch
7
it
minutes
back.
left. What are you doing to yourself?
I could not remember anything that happened in the last 15 minutes.
Because he was too pissed in the corporate box.
No, I wasn't. I wanted to be fully semi-sober for this.
You only had 6 pints.
This special moment.
6 glasses of wine.
Do you know, here, actually, and I only thought of this at the time, everything was going fine. I had a nice glass of red wine, and I went to pick it up as Mayo went 2 points in front, and the glass just broke in two in my hands.
A metaphor.
Ooh.
Maybe you did it. You're the curse. Right, we got hammered by all the Dublin fans for doing this piece on the show earlier in the week. Former GAA president Sean Kelly and Ewan McKenna were on, and they were talking about the investment that has been made in Dublin GAA. It started really under Sean Kelly's presidency and obviously has continued not quite unabated since. There's been some reduction at various stages and the numbers have changed. But anyway, the lads crunched the numbers with Joe during the week, and Sean Kelly was asked, if he had expected the impact to be quite so dramatic.
Did you envisage it being so successful? Do you have mixed feelings about the extent of Dublin dominance, about the amount of money they've received over the last decade?
No, I think it was wonderful for the GAA. At that time, there was a concern, especially in the post-Jack Charlton era, with the rugby going professional and so forth, that the GAA would fall apart, or at least fall backward in the city. And it was very important to be strong in Dublin. Clubs there now are really powerful clubs. Okay, they have big populations, but they're powerful clubs. They're all committed. Look at the Kilmacud 7-a-side. Look at the St. Jude 7-a-side. All that's voluntary commitment, and that has actually grown and strengthened. And I think we should rejoice in the strength of the GAA in Dublin. Rejoice that they are successful, but now we must come up with ways to ensure that we have better teams to beat them. And that is what we are planning to do here in Kerry.
One, I would defend the right to do the piece this week, and two, I would say it was a fairly relaxed conversation about it where Dublin didn't get hammered in any way and everybody acknowledged that they were the greatest team of all time or pretty close to it.
there's in no way is this piece or the even having this discussion anti-Dublin. In no way. It's just a project that has gone horribly well, and it's left the GAA in Dublin in incredibly good health, but it has got major issues surrounding GAA in the rest of the country, or certainly elite GAA in the rest of the country in inter-county Gaelic football. I said to the lads during the week, I'm bringing my young fella down to the minis in Raheny GAA at the moment on Saturday mornings. Brand new AstroTurf pitch, 200 kids there between the ages of 3 and 7, and I turn around to my brother-in-law when we were there, and I looking out on the pitch, and I just said, this is why Dublin will win 25 of the next 30 All-Irelands, because what we were witnessing there is being replicated probably 50, 60, 80-fold across the county at that exact moment in time, and it's something that no other county in the country can compete with.
They did the right thing, as Sean Kelly said. They looked at what was going on with their rivalry with the other sports, and they invested. But then circumstances changed. Suddenly, the crash happened. Suddenly, the entire way people live in this country changed, and people don't move back to rural areas when they move to the city. So they put this massive investment in. Suddenly everyone's thinking, well, this is a nice life for us in Dublin. Am I going to move back to Mayo? Am I going to move back to Leitrim? Am I going to move to Carlow? They have this huge population increase, and they need to keep up that level of investment to keep all those people happy as well.
Yeah, and actually they're not doing that well in terms of the percentage of the population who are registered players compared to other counties. So there's still massive room for growth in Dublin in terms of getting the playing population up.
Yeah, they've harnessed their resources brilliantly in the last 10 years, but unfortunately, dangerously, there is still significant room to improve that again. And if that happens, the splitting of the county debate, I think, is just erroneous, because you know what's going to happen. 10 years' time, every second or third All-Ireland final is going to be contested between North and South Dublin. What happens then? Do you split it 4 ways?
Yeah, I think you probably do actually have that conversation in advance and say, where are the population strengths? What would a credible outcome for this be? And what will ultimately level the playing field to a point where we can have a competitive championship? Now, that's all on the proviso that the money isn't going to be squandered by idiot county boards around the country. And there is no evidence that all of those county boards can actually manage their finances in a constructive way.
And it was another point that was made by Joe during this piece. Pretty much every penny that has arrived in Dublin's lap in the last 10 years has been spent wisely, intelligently, put into the right places and utilised as best it can be. So you have to hand it to Dublin for that. And as you say, the evidence isn't necessarily there that whatever the amount might be in other counties, that it'll be spent just as well.
From a purely lifestyle point of view, though, you can't compete down the country with what they're offering in Dublin. Like, I know in Mayo, they're looking at the 10 players who are in the squad and thinking, all right, for the next generation, how do we stop that happening? We have to do a link up with the colleges. We have to keep as many of these players and create jobs, the type of jobs that they will want in and around Mayo.
Yeah.
A lot of those jobs are just never going to go to Mayo.
Well, I don't think it's impossible to envisage an Ireland where the decentralisation dirty word is actually revisited in a structural way that makes a lot of sense. Like, you see the success of things like the Wild Atlantic Way. It's a massive tourism boost for the entire West Coast. There are other solutions that are out there than having one megalopolis where everybody lives, where we all live in increasingly small houses and have no green space. Like, the quality of life that we all have in Dublin versus the quality of life that we would have being able to do similar jobs on the West Coast or on greenfield sites. I would actually much prefer to be able to live out there, but that's not the current situation. We're not thinking about that. And this isn't being used as a possibility of having a conversation about, why do we all live in traffic-choked one city with horrible public transport and crap taxi apps that don't work? Why is that the situation?
I was thinking about there, as the clip was playing, of, do the government need to go in with the GAA and the various sports organisations and use that as one of the pillars of trying to rejuvenate rural Ireland?
I think so.
But do the government trust? Again, you're getting back to, when that money trickles down, who's going to be in charge of it at a base level? Professionals
that are audited and held to account. That's the way it has to be. It has to be this...
That are hired by the GAA.
Perhaps
installed by the GAA.
Perhaps, or maybe they're...
But that doesn't solve the...
Maybe they're installed by Sport Ireland.
The employment situation that Nathan brings up is... It's a geopolitical situation that can only be...
fixed by...
improved at government level,
exactly.
At national level.
And who should be making the argument most, though? What body has the most...
influence?
Or emotional heft when it comes to having that conversation? Like, what's going to keep the young people of Mayo and Mayo? It's not going to be football. It can't be football on its own. It's like, give your life to the GAA to the point where you're 30 and then not be qualified to do anything. Like, that doesn't work. So there has to be some proper conversations held about that.
But even if, like, how do you convince a US-based multinational to invest in the west of Ireland?
Well, they're doing a reasonable job on it, but you just need to try much harder and also maybe support local Irish industry as much as you support the multinationals, because if you can get cottage industries going, if you can get small to medium enterprises going in local areas, they attract jobs and they are there and they put their roots down. And that's actually one of the key drivers of the economy that doesn't get as much money really, because the IDA or the big fancy ones and the government come and they get the photo ops where they can cut the fancy ribbon. So
what happens in the meantime?
In the meantime, Dublin win 25 of the next 30 All-Irelands, like they do. And
a generation is lost to all the counties in whom there are a number of players who are probably talented enough to play at that level, but think, what's the point?
Exactly, and maybe it never comes back. Like that's why this conversation is really important, and it's not a begrudgery at all. It's that team is absolutely sensational. Those footballers are brilliant. The footballers of Mayo are brilliant. We've just witnessed a proper titanic struggle between two brilliant heavyweight teams, but we might not be able to see that ever again.
Yeah.
Like the 4 or 5 years.
You see, I think actually Mayo and Kerry and Donegal cover up the problem, because people will always point, why would you split Dublin? They've just won their All-Ireland by a single point. But you're always, in every sport, going to get one team who can push close. And in 10 years' time, they may win 25 of the next 30 All-Irelands. There'll still be teams pushing them along the way. But the gap between Dublin at number 1 and Roscommon as the 10th best team is just going to get greater and greater and greater.
I think that it's going to be a fluke, or like there'll be a sending off, like a mass sending off of 3 players in the first 15 minutes that cost.
It'll be remembered forever.
Time.
The day Dublin were beaten.
We were just talking about it in three of us were in a taxi earlier today about the Super 8s next year, and if they do time the draw and fix the draw appropriately, the GAA can make sure that, say, if Dublin and Kerry or Dublin and Mayo are in the same group, that they play off in round 1. So that one of them has been beaten going into round 2. So, for example, you could have the situation where Dublin have been beaten in Croke Park, that in one of their home games, in their home game by Mayo, and they're in Clonus next week. And they know they lose to Monaghan in an absolutely rammed Clonus, that they're out of the championship. So it could happen in the next year. But the long-term prognosis right now is not good.
Yeah, you'd have to say the Super 8s favours Dublin in their ability to put all of their subs to start the game.
And their ability
much
that
bigger
they
squad
go up
happy.
to Clonus, lose to Monaghan, it's a shock. But they still win their next 2 games.
In Croker.
Not if they've been beaten by another supposed heavyweight in the first game.